John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer. I am a consumer credit expert. I've been in the credit industry for almost 30 years now. I've spent time at FICO, which is obviously the company behind the FICO credit scoring system, and Equifax, which is one of the three generally recognized credit reporting agencies. I get this question once a week and have gotten this question once a week for decades. Can paying collections improve your scores? This is a really simple question with a really complicated answer because it's not as simple as saying yes or no. The answer to this question is, and unfortunately this is a common answer when it comes to questions about credit scores, is it depends. Let's define what a collection is. So I'm not talking about an account with your lender that is in their own internal collection department. I'm talking about when a lender or a service provider or a landlord has washed their hands of dealing with a consumer and they have essentially outsourced the collection of a debt to a third-party company, commonly referred to as a collection agency. They're also referred to as debt collectors. And what they report to the credit reporting agencies is called a collection account or a collection segment. It's not a trade line. You hear people talk about collection trade lines. That's incorrect. Collection account or a collection segment. Obviously, collections they have no redeeming value in a credit score. They're either neutral or they're negative. So the question is well, okay, what if I pay my collection? Is that going to help improve my credit score? And I think it's a very reasonable question because I think the reasonable answer is, it has to help your credit score, right? I mean, if you have a collection that's paid, that's better than having a collection that's not paid. Not necessarily. So there was a time where the answer to this question was a straight up no. A collection had the same negative impact on your credit score, whether it was paid or whether it was settled, or whether it was unpaid and the balance was still due and owing. And the reason is because what's predictive about a collection is the fact that it exists, not the balance of the collection. So just because you have a collection that was $1,000 and you've now paid it, that doesn't mean that you're a better credit risk than you were before you paid it. You still had a collection, you still went into default, you still essentially forced the lender or the service provider or the landlord to seek help from a third-party company because you refused to pay them. That's what's predictive, not the balance of the collection. Today, the answer to this question is very, very different than it was 15, 20 years ago. In some of the newer credit scoring systems, more contemporary credit scoring systems built by both FICO and VantageScore, because really those are really the only two credit scores that are commonly used in the world of consumer lending, at least in the United States. In the more contemporary versions of these scores, collections that have a zero balance are ignored, meaning that even though they're still cosmetically and physically present on your credit report, the fact that they have this in the balance field will cause the newer credit scoring systems to ignore them. So now the answer to this question for their versions, the newer versions, is going to be maybe. If you have 10 other unpaid collections and you have just one paid collection, then that isn't going to help improve your score because you're doing so poorly in that payment history category that it's really not relevant, the balances. So the fact that you've paid it is certainly better than being unpaid because it's going to stop the phone calls, it's going to stop the letters, it may stop a lawsuit against you, but it may or may not help the score. So let's talk about more specific medical collections, and this is one that's getting a lot of attention. In the newer credit scoring systems, medical collections, which by the way are clearly identified because collection agencies have to include a code with the collection that indicates whether or not it's medical related. So it's actually very easy for credit scoring systems to know if something is a medical related collection or not. Medical collections in the newer credit scoring systems have been discounted. Now, a lot of people, when they hear the word discount, they think that means ignored. No, discounted, which means that even as an unpaid medical collection, they're not as damaging as they would have been in the older versions of the credit scores. And if the collection is from something like you skipped out on your apartment contract or you skipped out a bill with a credit card issuer. So even though they're balance due, the impact is discounted. They're still considered bad. It's just not going to be as problematic as they would have been. Now, if you have a medical collection that eventually is paid or is being paid by an insurance policy, so your insurance coverage, the credit reporting agencies are going to remove those from your credit reports. And obviously, a collection that is no longer on the credit report cannot have any influence in your credit score. And so the answer to that question may be yes. But again, if you have a bunch of other bad stuff, then the answer is going to be probably not. So really, the answer to this question is a whole lot of it depends and what ifs, and if this happens, then that happens. But generally speaking, it's always better to pay a collection because you end any sort of communication between yourself and the debt collector, and that's obviously where you'd like to be. And you also end a bunch of the nasty stuff like the potential for lawsuits and the phone calls and the letters and such. And that's always a better place to be health-wise for your credit report. But I would not expect your score to go flying through the roof just because you simply pay the collection, although there are certainly some scenarios where that is a possibility. But generally speaking, people who have collections have other derogatory entries on their credit reports. It's very unusual that you'll see a pristine credit report and one collection. Usually you see a credit report that has a bunch of troubling information, including collections. So certainly while it's a good idea to pay them or settle them, sometimes your score will go up, sometimes your score will not go up. It just really depends on the version of the credit score and what type of collection it is. So if you have any other questions about collections, or if you have a specific example, hey, what about this one? Hey, what about that one? Drop them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get to them. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.